Blinding laser weapons. If you've ever gone outside on a really sunny day and tried to look directly at the sun, you know how impossible and painful that is. Now imagine someone aiming a beam brighter than the sun's rays directly into your eyes. Sounds horrific, right? Unfortunately, that's exactly what blinding laser weapons were designed to do. These weapons were specifically engineered to cause permanent blindness. If your eyes accidentally came into contact with one of these beams, there was a high chance you'd lose your vision forever. You'd likely be relying on visual aids or even a guide for the rest of your life. Lasers have been incredibly useful for the military, especially for targeting, range finding, and guiding other weapons. But weaponizing them to deliberately blind people crossed a line, from tactical advantage to outright cruelty. Permanent blindness is a life-altering consequence no soldier signs up for, even in war. Thankfully, in 1998, blinding laser weapons were banned as tools of war under international law. Chemical warfare. If you were born in the early 1900s, chances are you'd have been enlisted as a soldier in World War I. Wars are already brutal and deadly events that claim millions of lives. But now imagine, on top of all that, being hit by a giant cloud of poisonous gas that made your lungs and skin feel like someone poured a mix of acid, pepper, and garlic all over you. That's what chemical warfare was all about. While you were stuck in filthy trenches trying to dodge bullets and bombs, you'd suddenly feel like you had just inhaled a bucket of hot sauce. Before you even realized what was happening, your entire battalion could be choking to death on their own vomit and bodily fluids. Chemical warfare used toxic agents like mustard gas, chlorine gas, and nerve agents to incapacitate or kill enemy forces. These gases didn't just make you cough, they attacked your lungs, your skin, and even your sanity. Victims suffered severe blisters, blindness, lung damage, and often a slow and painful death. What made chemical weapons especially terrifying was their lack of precision. They didn't just hit enemy soldiers, they contaminated everything in their path: civilians, animals, crops, and the environment itself. Thankfully, after witnessing the horrific effects of chemical warfare during World War I, the world decided enough was enough. In 1925, the Geneva Protocol was signed, banning the use of chemical weapons in war. The international community agreed that suffocating your enemies in a cloud of invisible poison was a step too far, even in the horrors of war. Perfidy. Imagine you're playing hide and seek with a friend, and someone suddenly steps out and says, "I give up, I'm not hiding anymore." So you come out of your spot, only to get jumped by the same person who just claimed they were done playing. Pretty unfair, right? Well, that's exactly what perfidy is. But instead of a playground game, it happens during war, with far more serious consequences. Perfidy is when one side pretends to surrender or stop fighting, maybe by waving a white flag or claiming they're giving up, only to launch a surprise attack the moment the other side lets their guard down. It's like swearing on your mum's life that you're done fighting and then stabbing the other person in the back. This kind of deceptive tactic is especially harmful because war is already chaotic, exhausting, and dangerous. Using lies and tricks to lure enemies into a false sense of safety not only makes things worse, but also undermines trust in the few rules of war that exist. Sometimes perfidy goes even further. Some groups might disguise themselves as civilians or use civilian buildings for attacks. This not only breaks the rules, but it puts real civilians at risk. If soldiers can't tell who's a threat anymore, they might start treating everyone, even innocent people, as enemies. It's like being at a costume party and mistaking every guest for the villain. Because of the danger and dishonesty involved, perfidy is banned under international humanitarian law. It was first outlawed in the Hague Conventions of 1907 and later reinforced by the Geneva Conventions of 1949. Because in war, just like in life, nobody likes being lied to. Cluster munitions. To understand cluster munitions, picture this. You're standing at the top of a staircase, holding a bag full of marbles. Then you tear it open, and the marbles scatter everywhere, rolling uncontrollably down the stairs. Now imagine that, instead of marbles, you're dropping tiny bombs, and instead of a staircase, you're unleashing them on a battlefield. That's essentially what cluster munitions do. These weapons are designed to cover a wide area with explosives, turning a single bomb into a party pack of destruction. It sounds efficient from a military perspective, until you realize how unreliable and dangerous these weapons really are. The problem is that not all of the bomblets explode on impact. Many just lie around, unexploded, waiting to be triggered by anything or anyone. A soldier, a curious child, or even a wandering animal could accidentally set one off. It's like leaving mousetraps all over your house and just hoping no one steps on them. This isn't a strategy, it's a recipe for chaos and tragedy. Because of the long-term threat they pose, cluster munitions were banned in the 2008 Convention on Cluster Munitions. They don't just endanger people during conflict, they remain a deadly hazard for years afterward. Imagine going for a peaceful stroll, long after a war has ended, only to step on one of these forgotten party favors. Not exactly a fun surprise. Poisoned weapons. Poisoned weapons are basically the battlefield version of playing dirty, because nothing screams fair fight quite like sneaking something toxic into your enemy's drink, or, more directly, into their bloodstream. Picture it. While your opponent is dodging bullets and bombs, you decide to borrow a page from the medieval playbook and coat your blade, arrowhead, or bullet with venom. The goal wasn't just to injure, it was to make sure the injury became lethal, laced with unbearable agony. This tactic was outlawed under the Hague Declaration of 1899 and later reinforced by the Chemical Weapons Convention of 1993. Aside from being a particularly gruesome method of killing, poisoned weapons are the ultimate act of cowardice. They bring with them slow, excruciating deaths, convulsions, foaming at the mouth, and all the other nightmarish symptoms you'd expect in a horror film about medieval torture. The suffering caused is so excessive that it's considered unacceptable, even in the already brutal realm of war. Hostage taking. Picture this. It's the Second World War, and you're just trying to keep your head down when enemy troops storm into your town. They burn, loot, and then round up you and others, turning you from innocent civilians into bargaining chips. That's hostage-taking in a nutshell. It doesn't just happen to civilians. Soldiers can be taken too. Captors hold them to force negotiations, make demands, or even use them as human shields. It's essentially saying, I've got your people, so do what I want, or else. Not exactly a noble tactic, and one widely seen as a cowardly move. The damage isn't only to those in captivity. The mere threat of hostage-taking spreads fear through entire communities, creating constant anxiety and disrupting daily life. Recognizing the severe physical and psychological toll, the international community outlawed the practice in 1979, labeling it a blatant violation of human rights. At its core, hostage-taking is about reducing people to pawns in a violent game they never agreed to play, a game that can end in tragedy if the captor's demands aren't met. Scorched earth policy. You imagine coming home to find burglars in your house. Instead of calling the police or trying to stop them, you decide to torch the entire place, burning your home, your belongings, and the thieves along with them. That's the essence of the scorched earth policy. If you can't keep it, no one will. In warfare, this means that instead of retreating quietly, an army deliberately destroys everything in its path. Farms, homes, bridges, livestock, even whole towns. So the enemy has nothing left to use. It's the ultimate, if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me move. The cost, however, is devastating. Civilians are left without food, shelter, or the means to rebuild. Even the side carrying out the destruction can suffer long-term consequences. This tactic is less about winning battles and more about ensuring there's nothing left to win or lose. While it has been used throughout history, it's considered a last resort, a medieval style way of flipping the chessboard when you realize you're losing. The Geneva Conventions condemn and ban scorched earth tactics, emphasizing that wars should be fought between soldiers, not at the expense of civilians or the land they depend on.
White phosphorus against civilians? Think about the sting of snow or ice on bare skin. Now flip that sensation completely. Imagine that instead of cold, it feels like molten lava pouring over you. That's the kind of agony white phosphorus causes on contact, except even worse. White phosphorus is a chemical that ignites the moment it meets oxygen. Once airborne, it burns at around 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt through flesh and bone. It also releases thick white smoke, which can hide troop movements on the battlefield, but can also suffocate anyone unlucky enough to be nearby. This stuff is like the military's fire-breathing dragon. Only this dragon doesn't care who it scorches. The particles stick to skin, clothing, and gear, burning relentlessly until they're deprived of oxygen. The injuries are deep, agonizing, and often fatal. Surviving the initial strike doesn't mean escaping the horror. It can mean a lifetime of severe burns and trauma. Because of its indiscriminate and devastating effects, using white phosphorus directly against civilians is banned under Protocol 3 of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. It's allowed only for specific military uses, such as creating smoke screens or battlefield illumination, kind of like how fireworks are fine in a public show, but a terrible idea in your living room. Pillage. So let's just imagine that you're a medieval peasant minding your own business on a peaceful Sunday afternoon. You've just finished harvesting your crops and you're about to enjoy a nice cup of ale when suddenly, out of nowhere, a group of soldiers comes barging into your farmland. They literally start taking everything by force, your crops, your livestock, your shiny new pitchfork, and leave you with nothing but your muddy boots. Well, this broad daylight stealing is called pillaging, and it is when soldiers loot and plunder everything they can lay their hands on in an enemy's territory. Now, as tempting as it might be for an army to grab anything that isn't nailed down, pillaging is banned as a military strategy because it is just plain unfair. Think about it. You're not even a soldier. You're a farmer who spends all day planting turnips, not plotting world domination. So why should you lose? Everything. Because some army is passing through, it's like being grounded because your sibling did something wrong. Noon likes that, especially when you didn't do anything to deserve it. It's also really counterproductive and dumb, because armies need supplies to keep going. Food, water, and shelter, and if they pillage a town and take everything, what's left for them when they next pass through? It's like eating all your snacks during the first 5 minutes of a road trip. What are you going to munch on for the next 8 hours? Ultimately, pillaging is banned because it drags out conflicts, creates unnecessary hardships, and leaves you the soldier on the wrong side of history and the law. Denial of quarter. Imagine you're on a battlefield, outnumbered, outgunned, and completely exhausted. You can barely lift your arms, let alone aim a weapon. So you and your comrades do the only sensible thing. You surrender. Weapons on the ground, hands in the air, knees in the dirt. You're ready to end the nightmare. But instead of accepting your surrender, the enemy commander orders their troops to open fire. At that point, it's no longer a fight. It's cold-blooded killing. This is denial of quarter, a brutal tactic where surrender is not an option. The unspoken rule is simple: fight or die. Even if you wave a white flag, throw down your weapons, and plead for mercy, the answer under this policy is always the same. None will be given. No prisoners, no compassion. Because it's both cruel and a direct violation of the laws of war, denial of quarter is banned under the Geneva Conventions and customary international humanitarian law. Surrendered or wounded combatants are supposed to be treated with basic humanity, medical care, food, shelter, not executed on the spot. Denying quarter is considered a war crime because it removes the possibility of surrender, forcing combatants to fight to the death and causing needless bloodshed on both sides. In short, it's the kind of warfare the world has agreed should never happen again. Terror bombing, picture this. You're in your hometown, going about an ordinary day, when the wail of an air raid siren cuts through the air. You look up, and the once clear sky is swarming with enemy aircraft. Moments later, bombs start raining down, not on military bases, but right into the heart of your city. Streets erupt in fire and rubble, and chaos spreads like wildfire. That's terror bombing, a tactic where civilian areas are deliberately targeted to crush morale and force surrender. The strategy is simple and ruthless. Make daily life unbearable by destroying homes, schools, hospitals, and infrastructure until the population's desperation pushes their leaders to give in. It's the "if we can't break their army, we'll break their spirit" approach to warfare. One of the most infamous examples came in World War II, when atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. 6 days later, Japan surrendered, but at the cost of unimaginable civilian suffering. Because of its indiscriminate nature and its aim to terrorize non-combatants, terror bombing is now banned under the Geneva Conventions and other international treaties. War, brutal as it is, still has rules, and one of the most basic is this: civilians are not targets.